Hi, I'm Ben Carr with Halcyon, and today we're talking to Hiep Dang. Hip, great to see you. It's actually our first time to actually physically meet in person, although we've worked together in the past, right? Qualis.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
We've known each other for what, like 5 years now?
Yeah, it's been
and
never met in person.
throughout the pandemic, and like now we finally get to meet in person at RSA.
Yeah, kind of crazy. It seems like what RSA is for, right? Is actually to make those connections, and the stuff that happens outside of the actual conferences is where more stuff happens. So
Absolutely.
yeah, great to like I say face to face. But yeah, you're with Hidden Layer now, right? So maybe kind of introduce yourself so everybody understands where you're coming from and what you're doing at Hidden Layer.
Yeah, so at Hidden Layer, I'm Vice President of Strategic Tech Alliances.
Okay.
It's a fancy name for saying that I get to talk to all the companies in the world and talk about how we can partner and how we can do better in securing AI. And that's basically what we do at Hidden Layer. So at Hidden Layer, we're a cybersecurity company that protects AI against attack. So there's a lot of confusion. Confusion right now. Whenever you put the terms AI and cybersecurity together, you start to see people turning through their brains. Like, hey, what does that mean? Is it bad guys using AI? Is it good guys using AI? Cybersecurity, traditional cybersecurity products. We created a new category for cybersecurity for AI. We're actually protecting AI.
So you have to be
attack.
seriously in demand right now. Like that's everybody's talking about AI. It's the hot buzzword. It's the sexy thing in security, right? I like to say that in security, everyone wants to chase the shiny ball. Well, you're the shiny ball right now.
Yeah, we are the shiny ball, but you couldn't have predicted what's happened in the last 2 years since we came out of stealth. It's been phenomenal. You couldn't even script it better than that. But where the idea came from actually was from our previous company that we worked for before, Silence. Silence was actually a cybersecurity product that used AI. Actually, Silence revolutionized the adoption and usage of AI for traditional cybersecurity and solving the antivirus problem.
Yeah, and founders at Halcyon came from Silence as well, right? I mean, we have a lot of people who are former Silence employees here too. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, a foundational side of AI and cyber that a lot of people have come out of that technology company.
We're part of the same family tree.
Exactly. Connected.
Yeah.
So step back for a second, because one of the things that I always find a little frustrating is when we hear about AI, and we've heard about it for a long time, right? I mean, pre-Silence days, like there were people who talked about AI, and it seems like it comes in these waves. And then people mix AI and ML, right?
Yep.
I think to an extent. But then also AI, when I hear about AI right now, I think a lot of people, what they really mean is LLMs, right? And that's not like, if you think about the Venn diagram, like there's the larger Venn diagram that's AI, and then there are these sub areas that are generative AI and then LLMs within generative AI. But it gets confusing. So maybe, I don't know if you can walk through a little bit of that and kind of talk about where Hidden Layer actually addresses the problems in security around that, because it's not as simple as just saying like AI, right?
Totally. Yeah. So artificial intelligence and the idea behind. So machine learning is a subcategory of artificial intelligence, but now from a marketing perspective, the two terms are basically being used synonymously.
Sure.
Because it's easier for most the average Joe to wrap their head around the term artificial intelligence versus machine learning. So, but the concept has been around for well over 50 years, if not close to 100 years, or academically. Sure. And what's really interesting, Ben, when I joined Hidden Layer, one of the things I used to run product management for many of these companies. Whenever I plan and launch a new product, I go back and read Crossing the Chasm. It's pretty, well known.
If you haven't read it, read the book. But yeah,
I love it. And so it's like one of those things. Like when you're a professional, whatever you're doing, whether you're in sports, whether you're in the technical realm, or whatever the case may be, you kind of have to continue to sharpen your edge, right? So I like to go back and read that book and look at and it's got a whole bunch of case studies of companies and technology that never crossed that chasm, never actually made it to be mainstream, and what were the reasons for that. And so when I joined Hidden Layer, I polished off my book, and it was I think the first or second edition. So I'm pretty old.
Old school there.
And it was funny is I came across in chapter 1, AI was a case study for a technology that never crossed the chasm. So this edition was published, I think, in the early 90s.
Wow.
Right. And the author went through and said, here's why AI never made it. because it was early. Cost of computing was so expensive. Cost of data storage was so expensive that it wasn't actually profitable to be able to create AI models. So it stayed in the academic realm for a good number of decades.
Yeah, and it's been a part of pop culture, right? Like AI
has.
has been something that we've talked about. There's been a lot of books that have been around. Like when you say, the 90s, I mean, people go back to the 70s, right? There's sci-fi. If you think Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
The AI behind that, right? Actually doing things for the benefit of somebody, right? And a computer. Yeah.
And so there's so many examples of science fiction becoming science reality. And so then that begs the question, well, what happened? What happened to the ecosystem at large to allow now AI to be embraced? So what happened was, if you guys remember, in the early 2010s, is this little thing called cloud.
Yeah.
Right. So, cloud was, taking all of our, computational capabilities from an on-prem data center and putting it in somebody else's data center. Right. But with what Amazon and AWS did was they, created a completely new category, and they made computing more extensible, more approachable, more scalable. And so not only computing, but data storage. So cloud computing actually ushered in an era to make AI possible today. And so that's what happened with the likes of Silence and CrowdStrike and SentinelOne, all the major cybersecurity companies that you're familiar with. What we did at Silence was, it's like, okay, cloud computing, being able to use the cloud and not having to spend all these millions of dollars on hardware that we actually have to support and maintain, it allowed us to play around with machine learning and really create something novel. And so the outcome of what happened with Silence is we trained on all the petabytes of known malware in the world. And then we also trained on all the legitimately clean files. And the outcome of that, and we fed it through our machine learning algorithm to say, hey, here's what malware looks like. Here's what the clean files look like. So that was, and the machine learning model you could put onto an endpoint. And so a brand new file shows up that no one's ever seen before. You could have been patient zero. And it could have said, it said, that's actually malware, right? And predict the fact that that 0 day, that O day was actually malware, and proactively block it. So it was a fun ride with Silence. I mean, you can ask the Halcyon guys. We were there, and
We've had a lot of conversations over the years about stuff.
Yeah. A lot of barroom conversations. And I remember distinctly one day at Silence, I get a random call on my cell phone, and I usually don't pick it up because it's like mostly spam and mostly cold calls. I picked it up for whatever reason because it was a local area code, and I started getting yelled at. And I was like, it was a customer who wanted to buy Silence, but we were going so fast and we couldn't scale our sales org. So this gentleman found my cell phone number in a working group, a local cybersecurity community, found me and said, I've been trying to buy you guys. I'm up to renew my AV. I want to buy you guys, and no one's returning my call. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Connected him with a salesperson, got him going. It was great.
Yeah, that's a good but frustrating problem to have.
Exactly. So yeah, it was like it was just a wild ride. But then what happened was, after Silence ended up getting bought by BlackBerry for $1.4 billion, there was an attack on Silence's machine learning model. You can read it today. You can Google it. It's called Silence, I Kill You. And this research, so by the way, they didn't follow responsible disclosure. We woke up one day and saw that someone had attacked the model and gave all of the details of what they did. And so our founding team, so Tito Sestito, which is our CEO, Jim Ballard, and Tanner Burns, they were part of that incident response team that looked at and responded to that incident, and it was actually my consumer product that got attacked at the time. So I was involved as well, and so what we come to find out was we now know what it's called. It's called an inference attack.
Okay.
Right. An inference attack is when someone interacts with a machine learning model and continues to interact with it in a in a deliberate way to infer information on the model. So as you're interacting with the model, you can infer the potential data it was trained on. You can infer the decision boundaries with the model. And you do it enough for long enough, you can actually infer the entire algorithm of the model and actually
Yeah, it's
conduct
kind of
model
reverse engineering the model, right? Trying to
Basically.
figure out how the model actually would react.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And so we were caught flat-footed on this. We're like, wait, how did they do this? And it took us many months to respond to it. But here's the thing: at Silence, we prided ourselves on being on the forefront, cutting edge of cybersecurity and cybersecurity best practices. Right? Hidden Layers CISO Malcolm Harkins, which I'm sure many the CISO community knows really well. He was a CISO at Silence at the time as well, and we did all the things right. We were SOC 2 compliant. We were FedRAMP compliant. We would do code audits. We red teamed our technology. We penetration tested. We did vulnerability scans, all the things that you're supposed to do, even more so. But we were still caught flat-footed to this because the industry at large was blindsided to this approach. That was the moment, the epiphany moment for our founders. And they realized that if and when AI, and this is 2019, by the way, this is well before ChatGPT. If and when AI became widely adopted, all machine learning models would be susceptible to the same type of attack.
So let's talk about that actually. Like when you think about how AI is being used or talked about in security, right? Right. There's different perspectives. And I think maybe you talked about this a little bit earlier. There's using AI to enhance security products and enhance people's security, right? Of their enterprise or on a personal level if you're doing personal products. But then there's the adversaries, right? The threat actors using AI to actually, I think, enhance their activity and reduce the cost on their side, right? And then there's actually securing the AI itself. So when you think about those three phases, and I know Hidden Layer is really involved in securing the AI, talk a little bit about, because I think that's one thing that I've had a big interest in, is how the emergence of AI is going to be used by threat actors to actually essentially democratize and make it very easy for them to lower their cost and their burden to actually attack and affect the industry.
Yeah, AI, I mean, we've all read the headlines, right? AI is going to revolutionize the world, or AI is going to be doomsday scenario. The reality is probably going to be somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And so again, I keep saying I'm old, but I remember the days of pre-internet, just like you do, right?
Sure.
And I my default is to be idealistic. And if you look at how we've evolved as an industry, as a society, with all these revolutionary technologies, right? Going back to the internet, it's like when I saw it hit me, the realization of the benefits of the internet, the information superhighway, right? I know you're just like me. You're like, we have a thirst for knowledge. It was like, wow, I could actually get all this information that I want to know at my fingertips without spending an entire weekend at the library, like at the periodic table, right? Or not periodic table, the card
catalog?
Yeah, card catalog. And looking up a book and like doing all that. And so I was like, oh man, I was just so idealistic about the benefits of the internet. But then reality set in. And so just like any tool, any powerful tool, it could be used for good, it could be used for evil. And then it ushered in, like it exploded the cybersecurity threat vector, right? It brought in, it used to be just computer viruses, and Trojans on bulletin board systems. And all of a sudden now we have spam, we have phishing, we have parasitic, password stealing Trojans, we have rootkits and all this other stuff. So the threat landscape exploded as a result of the internet, because now we're putting our credit card information out there, our personal identifiable information on there. So the goods is now
and that's
available.
just data, right? I mean, that can be easily consumed by a model, right?
Right. And I think that's what's going to happen with AI. And so, going back to the 70s and 80s, for someone to be able to create a computer virus, you had to be really technically, like in the upper 10% of a developer, because the original motivation around creating a computer virus was full just academics. Like, can I create a piece of code that can propagate and continue to live on and replicate itself into other computer systems, right? And so it's just an academic challenge of doing that was just so technically sophisticated that it was mostly done to just kind of like, kind of puff up your peacock feathers in terms of your technical ability.
Well, yeah, I worked for Network Associates back in the day, a long time ago, right? 99. And so at that time, common AV, it really wasn't necessarily, it was just, I think, on the emergence of the real malicious actor trying to go after and cause harm.
Right.
It was a lot of look, people trying to figure out could they do something, and the release of that causing potential impact, right?
Exactly.
But we've transformed. Like the world has transformed. Where now, where Halcyon is actually really focused on the ransomware side.
Right.
It's a monetization, right? It's how do we deliver this activity, this payload,
Right.
to create some type of monetary benefit where we can hold a company for ransom, right?
Right.
And I think that's fundamentally changed it. And I think, if you look at Change Healthcare, where we're seeing, a $22 million ransomware with $1.6 billion of impact, like either for someone who's a really malicious actor, right? A nation state type of attack. They see, oh, could be severely damaging.
Yep.
Somebody who has political motivations, right? Says, okay, maybe I could move my political motivation forward by creating this type of attack. Or somebody who just says, hey, I want some money, right? Like this becomes foundationally, I think, where a lot of we're going to see the new attacks come from, because they see the impact that it can cause. And AI is going to be kind of, I think, foundational to a lot of that.
And to your point, so, we went from, you had to be sophisticated technically in order to create malware. Then all of a sudden we went to the script kiddie era, right? The early 2000s, where now you could be mediocre at technically and still create malware and actually make money. To your point, now and then it became more sophisticated with state-backed attacks. To your point, but what AI is going to do is it's going to make it available, both attack and defense. We're going to bring down the barrier to entry for pretty much anyone. I don't think you even have to be technically savvy in order to ask AI to create a piece of malware.
Yeah, I think we've seen this, right? We've seen models that have been developed specifically with malicious intent, right? And so I think that's certainly going to be something that's going to have a high prevalence. And I think the speed at which an attack happens, the speed at which it spreads, and as you said, the ease of actually using it are going to be something we're going to see a great increase in.
Right. And so if you look at that, for the evolution of the threat landscape and also cyber defense, it used to be highly technical attackers, threat actors, versus highly technical defenders and threat researchers. Then when we went to the script kiddie era, it's like, okay, you have automation creating malware, and then you have automation protecting against it, or against the attacks. And now we're going to get to an era where it's going to be AI versus AI attacking and defending.
Yeah, and the speed at which that's going to happen is going to, I don't think people are going to be able to handle it unless they've got defense mechanisms in place that are able to operate at that speed of reaction.
100%, right? And that's what you guys do at Halcyon.
100%, yeah. So, well, from a hidden layer perspective, like, when you say you're securing AI, how are you doing that, right? Because I think about like securing AI, I think of a lot of different things, like somebody maliciously taking advantage of AI in an unintended way, right? We've seen, I think, this where people are asking, ChatGPT to do something. It says, I can't do it. And they phrase it differently, and it actually responds in a way that they can, right? I also think about things of people abusing the model, right? Like actually inserting things into the model that aren't actually true. And then the assumption gets carried throughout that model and the response, right? And I think data poisoning could be, something that we were really going to have to take concern of. And then, you talk about AI talking to AI. And increasing the replication of those errors and issues, right? So how do you, where does hidden layer fit into actually that protection model, and what are you focusing on in actually protecting AI?
Yeah, so we're focused on the machine learning model itself, right? The actual entity that is the AI. So just like any new emerging technology, as we're on the cusp of this widespread adoption of it, and you start to see common patterns. One of the common patterns is it's the wild, wild west right now. There's no best practices. There's no regulations. There's no guardrails. Although we've learned from the lessons of the past, we're proactively starting to regulate and think about how to put these guardrails in place and safety measures in place. So that's the good news. But the bad news is, being in the wild, wild west, we talk to pretty much all the companies up and down the enterprise spectrum, and everyone's using a different tool. Everyone's using a different cloud service provider. Everyone's using this and that. And so there's no consolidation yet. It's going to expand before it starts to contract. The other thing that's happening right now is there's a format war in terms of AI. And what I mean by that is a machine learning model, there's a specific file formats that you can choose from. And there's dozens of them out there. So some examples is like Pickle, Safe Tensor, Onyx, Keras, Scikit-learn, and there's dozens of them. Each one of them have their different nuances. And so a machine learning model, what's interesting about it is it has sensitive data because you have to use data to train the model, but it also has code execution capabilities. And we talked about before, it's like, you mentioned, data is where the goods are, and you use code execution to be able to get to those goods. And now you have it contained in a single package, right? And so the keys of the kingdom now are in this machine learning model, and that's where the attacker is going to get to. And so when a company right now is, depending on where they are in their journey of adopting AI, there's an AI arms race going on right now. Many of the early adopters of AI are the major industries that could afford, a full-scale data science team and ML engineering team.
It's always the first movers are the people that have the cash, right?
Exactly, right. And that's the financial sector. That's the public sector, defense. It's healthcare.
Biotech.
Exactly, exactly. Those are the ones that could afford it, and they're their early adopters. Those are the ones that have a vested interest in protecting both their sensitive data and their intellectual property, because oftentimes they'll have proprietary algorithms that they've designed themselves. But what's happened is for everyone else down market, how do I adopt AI? Well, it's created this hyper demand for third-party foundational models, pre-trained models, and open source models. Mm-hmm. There's a company called Hugging Face that's really popular in the AI community. Think of them as the GitHub of AI, of machine learning models. I'm old. I like to, I joke that they're like to me, they're like the Napster or LimeWire, right? Because
that's a throwback.
Right. Remember we were in college and like, you're downloading the MP3s, all of a sudden you get a Trojan and you get infected, like, I got to clean this up again. Yeah. Right. That's kind of like where we are right now with machine learning models. So Hugging Face this time last year had about 50,000 models that anyone can go and download and start to play with their models. Today, they exceeded over 600,000 models. Oh. So that is a symptom of the hyper demand of machine learning models. And so that's how a lot of companies are bootstrapping their adoption of AI, is downloading models from Hugging Face. Those models we've already found, and we've scoured all the different zoos and repositories. We've already found thousands of compromised or Trojanized models. So a machine learning model is a threat vector coming in because it's susceptible to all the traditional cybersecurity weaknesses and vulnerabilities. They'll have vulnerabilities that can be exploited. They can have embedded backdoors. They can have arbitrary code execution, and they can actually have malware embedded in them.
So how does the CISO actually respond to this, right? Because, in an enterprise company, the CISO is sitting there and he's thinking, there's this push from the business to bring AI in, right? To utilize it. And there's a great benefit potentially to that. And it's a competitive advantage and a first mover advantage. And so, if somebody wants to use that on the business side, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the CISO. But the CISO is thinking, look, we don't necessarily understand the concept of security for AI yet. Right. You're telling me now that there's a lot of security issues in the models that these people may be using or how they're implementing it. And then I think there's also this, essentially the supply chain of AI, right? Where, we may be looking at it ourselves in one way, but how that data is then implemented into the third party that's actually we're using, right? And what are they connected to from an AI chain? And how does that data then get replicated further down in other models, right?
Right.
Like there's a lot of concern here. So what's the CISO do? Like how does he react?
Yeah, it's a great question. So here, good news is from a CISO perspective, we've been down this path before, right? Working with you, and I love how you operate, which is like you wanted to collaborate with the business. You wanted to be involved in understanding, what were the priorities of the business, where are our weaknesses, so that we can plug those up. So same idea here. And this is what I tell every CISO, that you do not need to have a PhD to understand AI, and you don't have to have a PhD to understand how to protect it. All you have to do is ask the same fundamental questions you've asked your entire career, which is, using examples. To protect the job of the CISO is to protect all the assets of a company. Traditionally, that was the endpoints and the servers, right? So you collaborate with the IT organization to make sure you understand the business criticality of all the hardware that we have. Or you collaborate with the HR department in terms of employee data, right? Or you collaborated with, when cloud came about, you had to collaborate with DevOps to understand where our cloud accounts were. And so you ask the same questions, which is, I can't protect things I don't know. So where are those assets? Right, and even to this day, asset inventory, right, with BYOD and IoT and everything like that.
But that's just a whole bad path to go down. Like that has never been solved. And like, I find it ironic. Yeah. Assets are a problem.
Right. And so you're kind of down that path with AI, which is the first question is, okay, where are my models? But to take a page out of what we've done historically, think of it like, managed versus unmanaged models, just like management versus unmanaged devices, right? So your managed models are the models that your team and your company is actively training and developing. So whether that's your data science team, if you have one, or your R&D team, or whatever department that's trying to figure out how to use AI, chances are they're using something, a tool called an ML ops tool, which stands for ML operations.
Okay.
And these are some examples like Azure ML or AWS SageMaker, Databricks, Snowflake, and that kind of thing. And so you're going to be using a tool like that to train and develop your models. And you're going to be downloading them from a Hugging Face or creating your own proprietary models. That's where your managed models are. If you haven't already had a conversation with those departments, have a conversation with them. Reach across the aisle like, hey, are you doing anything with AI? And what are you doing? Right? And so wrap your head around that, because those models are what you're going to want to be putting in production that you want to protect. The second is your unmanaged models. What that means is, anyone in the company, including a college intern, can go to Hugging Face and download a model. So you want to know all your ingress points of your models. Like it's raining, it's raining.
Look, this is very similar to the challenge of somebody standing up, going to GoDaddy and standing up a website, and it's an asset that you don't know about, right?
Exactly.
It's somebody going to a cloud service and standing up an asset that you don't know about. I mean, these are the unmanaged assets that we all find very frustrating.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of take a playbook from those, which is like, okay, how do I funnel it in? How do I get control of this problem? And there's a third aspect too. Even if you have a hard line, no AI in the company policy, right? And we've seen
You're not
some of
going to
that.
be very popular with the business.
You're right. But we've seen some of that. Like, you talk to a few CISOs, like, okay, I'm just going to stop it right now, but then let's slow roll our adoption in. So, as you know, I mean, CISOs don't want to get in the way of the business, but the department, so the data science team or the R&D team is like, we have to figure out how to bootstrap our adoption of AI. Like, we got to go fast and furious. They're not incentivized to protect the model. They're incentivized to adopt the model. And it's the CISO's responsibility to protect it. So having that collaborative relationship is important. But going back to this term of shadow AI, even if you have a policy that's like no AI at all, just the simple act of upgrading your software, all these software applications that you're using is incorporating machine learning models into their software packages, right?
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to get in front of the train. Like it's already hit you.
Yeah. So, knowing where your models are, knowing if they, you want to scan them, do a scan to make sure that any of the vulnerabilities and issues, you're not inheriting additional risk into your organization because you brought down a model that actually has embedded vulnerabilities that could be exploited, right? And not to do a product plug, but that's what we did at Hidden Layer. So when we won our RSA Innovation Sandbox, this is the story, and our CEO Tito says it a lot more succinctly. I'm verbose and long-winded because I like to get into the weeds. But Hidden Layer, we scan the models and helping companies. I'm going to use a marketing term, but I really like it. Going from pause to possibility. There is an AI hesitancy, to your point, which is like, I don't know what I don't know. I don't want to expose my company to all this risk. So, being able to provide more visibility into that risk is really the first step in securing an asset, right? So, we'll scan the model, we'll look for any and call out any of those vulnerabilities or risks, and you can make a business decision. Is that something that a risk I'm willing to take? Is it something that I can collaborate with my data science team and say, hey, you know what? You added a function call that has that can do a code execution or can traverse through the file system. Is that necessary? Right? Was that necessary to the purpose of the model itself, or can we create another version of the model that actually doesn't have those function calls that could be exploited? Right? And that's where the conversation needs to happen, is early on in the dev cycle of the model, so that you're not exposing that risk. And then once you put that model into production and you're exposing it to inferences, the outside world interacting with the model, then you're susceptible to a whole host of different attacks that, similar to what happened with Silence, what we call an inference attack or adversarial machine learning. And that's where you also need real-time attack monitoring, so that you can get tipped off on if a threat actor is interacting with a model in a certain way. You get an early warning system so that you can make the appropriate decision in either stopping them or doing something to the model to harden it and protecting it.
Yeah. So look, what I have as a takeaway from this is understand what your business is doing with regards to AI. Try to get good inventory of where you're using it and how you're using it, and then like don't be scared of it. Right. Get in front, get engaged, have the conversation, and figure out how to properly do the same normal security practices that we've done with every other technology wave that we've seen come in. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hiep, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation. It was really informative.
Love it.
Great meeting you in person here at RSA after 5 years. But yeah, thanks a lot.
I'm honored. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you, Halcyon, and the rest of the cybersecurity family. This is great. We're gonna do great things.
If anybody wants to get more information, how can they? Where do they go?
Yeah, hiddenlayer.com. It's our website. You can get to all of our collateral. We published the industry first AI threat landscape report.
Okay.
Or a threat report. And it goes in a lot more in depth to what I talked about, which is we talk about the landscape at large. We talk about all the different attacks on AI, and we talk about all the different defenses that you can put in place in order to protect your AI.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm Ben Carr. Thanks for watching this content. Have a great day.